verses 11 to 13.
Mark.
The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, asking him for a sign from heaven, to test him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to this generation." And he left them, and getting into the boat again, he went across to the other side. Lord, I can be so cold to your salvific presence as I hurry about, living the moment, and becoming so sufficient unto myself. There is little wonder that I find it hard to bring myself to prayer, to use faith to know you, divine love to live in you, and theological hope to trust in you. I approach you now, wanting only to be a more faithful disciple of your kingdom. Lord, grant a faith that will console your heart. Sending Christ away. G.K. Chesterton once asserted, "The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried." Jesus truly loves us and would never refuse a humble soul the true goods he needs for fulfillment and salvation. If our wants, like those of the Pharisees, end up leaving God silent and our spiritual life cold, it may be a call for us to purify our hearts of the remaining dregs of our self-centeredness. We should carefully avoid the attitudes and words that repel Christ. Christ will not let himself be loved for who he is not, and he will not indulge the desires we have for who we are not. We can want our happiness to be many things, but Christ wants us to accept that his will is the heart of our fulfillment. Prayer is my daily breath of air for the soul. Jesus converses with our souls in a language that flows from supernatural attitudes of faith, hope, and love. He will remain silent, however, if we drag him down to the small, narrow framework of our reason and calculations, wanting to figure it out for ourselves before we will act. Jesus does not want to be Superman, who comes into our lives only when things are really bad and all is lost. Rather, Christ intervenes because he wants a life of communion and grace day after day, sharing his life with each and every soul. He wants our living in fidelity and childlike trust to be like breathing the air. The signs that bring Christ to us. Christ did give us sure signs of his daily presence in our lives. The first is the sign of the cross. Only faith will unlock its mystery and bring us to the encounter between our sin and God's mercy. Sin is at the heart of the worst that can go wrong with our life. The sign of the crucified one is its cure. Faith will permit us, as it did the good thief, to see Christ's love at the center of the universe and the world, being drawn towards it as if into a vortex. Another sign he left us is the Eucharist. It is the most powerful sign because it contains the author of the sign himself. Christ humbles himself to stay with us at all costs. Under the appearance of bread and wine, he reveals what he wants to be for our souls. Under the veil of the sacrament, we learn to encounter Christ personally as pure love. On the night he was betrayed, he showed the depth of his love. Let these signs be the love language by which we talk to Christ in the way that he wants to be known, loved, and adored. Christ, let my prideful demands melt away before a mature encounter with your divine love. Keep my immaturity from impeding the expansion of your kingdom. Rather, let me humbly accept my need to change the way I relate to your true plan for my life.
Daily Meditations of Pope Benedict XVI, presented by Leonardo de Philippis of St. Luke Productions.
The Lord is peace.
In giving his peace to his friends, Jesus was simply bidding them farewell before going out into the darkness of the Mount of Olives. But this peace was also Jesus' last farewell before he set off on the way of the cross. Jesus could not have been superficially wishing his friends an easy, comfortable existence in his absence. Nor could he have been wanting his disciples to experience the peace of forgetfulness. Real peace can only be brought by release from the captivity of comfortable lies and the acceptance of suffering. The two liturgical formulae, the Lord be with you and peace be with you, are interchangeable and for a very good reason. The Lord himself is peace. He did not simply use words when he took his leave of his friends. He who on the cross suffered and overcame the lie and the hatred of mankind was peace itself. He himself came through his cross, and in giving his peace, he did not simply give something, he gave himself. The Lord gives himself to his own as peace. He places himself in their hands. We must ask him, then, to teach us how to celebrate the Eucharist truly and how to receive the truth that is love, and in this way to become, through him, people of peace.
This meditation is taken from Benedictus, published by Ignatius Press and Magnificat, and produced by St. Luke Productions. Learn more at stlukeproductions.com.
Today is Monday the 13th of February, in the 6th week of Ordinary Time. Karen Money sings, "Echo, let me stay a little longer, so I breathe in more of you." As I listen, I focus for a moment on my breathing, on the breath that is within me, the life that is within me, the breath, the life that God has given me.
Let me stay a little longer, so I breathe in more of you. If I could touch this moment's wonder, I would not let go. Kneeling close in lasting stillness, will you let me kiss your feet? Then my tears will fall in rivers. Love will make them sweet. When you take me to your heaven, I will see your glory. But for now, these precious moments echo through me, echo through me, echo.
Today's reading is from the Gospel of Mark.
The Pharisees came and began to argue with Jesus, asking him for a sign from heaven to test him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to this generation." And he left them, and getting into the boat again, he went across to the other side.
The Pharisees come to Jesus after they've made up their minds that it was their duty to test him. They must have spent some time talking this over. People were beginning to look more interested in Jesus than in them. Can you imagine what this conversation might have been like? What did they say? In a way, there's nothing wrong with looking for a sign, with looking for evidence, is there? It's part of the way we operate as human beings. Which people in my life do I demand evidence from before I believe what they say? Who are the people from whom I accept things on faith? As you listen again to the reading, try and imagine it happening. The mood of the Pharisees, the looks on their faces, the tone of voice they use, the exasperation, perhaps, in Jesus' voice.
The Pharisees came and began to argue with Jesus, asking him for a sign from heaven to test him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to this generation." And he left them, and getting into the boat again, he went across to the other side.
It's probably true that most people's attitude towards God and their relationship with God involves a mixture of evidence and faith. At times, we may want signs, and at times we may get them. Is this true for me? Can I talk to God about this now? Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.